see you, everyone. And this has been a great day already. I can tell you, I'm really excited that last 4 hours have led to the topic that we really wanted to talk about, because it's been very close to us and coming into this session. Especially Mike and I have spent quite a bit of time in the last few months just about how to get the small business program get up and going. Matthew and connected probably almost 3 months back, and he's been connecting us with people as we go, and then Satish and I connected over his personal experience, how we had he had to deal with small businesses and to kind of convince them you may be a target, you just don't know it yet, right? And then Vic, we met 2-3 days back, and seemed like where are you all these years, right? So great to get everyone together. I think we'll probably also be joined by Alex from the city of San Francisco as soon as he can make time and find out. But great to have you all. Satish and I are going to tag team with each other to get this discussion going. We wanted this hour and the next hour. We'll take a little bit of break in between. This team has been going from 7 in the morning, and we'll probably pause at 1:50 and then regroup at 2:10, or sorry, 1:10. 12:50. I'm been trying to translate my hours into East Coast time because a lot of our friends are joining from there. And now in the afternoon, it will be most of the West Coast friends, as probably Matthew joined here, and then others will join. So in the next 50 minutes, we wanted to go through, share a little bit of our findings with you and the rest of the group. I think we spoke already one-on-one on the things that we have been doing at CFF. And this is literally be the announcement towards getting to take the decision. Then let's have a little bit of open brainstorming, at least a round or two, to discuss what are the opportunities that lie ahead of us, and speaking with each of you have gone through this experience yourself in different roles. So we'll do that. So between now it's 12:05, say, and we go up till 12:50. Come back with a short break, and then at 1:10 Central, we're going to be joined by Kiersten. I know that you all cannot probably be for the entire 2 hours. So if you have to just drop a note at the chat box, so we'll keep an eye for that, so that we can facilitate your points of view sooner than later. But welcome you all. I think we'll probably let's start with a quick introduction. Satish, you can take this off, and then we'll go to. I'm just going by the view that is presented in front of me, Mike, and then Vic, and then Matthew. Okay, Satish, over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate this opportunity to come and share some of our journey here in SMB space. I'm Sathishkumar Gopalaswamy. I co-founded a cyber consulting firm, Odds, and our primary goal is to help healthcare industry to proactively act on cybersecurity. And I also have an opportunity to teach to all the MDs in Fort Worth Medical School about cyber hygiene. So that's a quick brief. Back to Alan.
Excellent. Mike?
Good afternoon. Mike Saylor. I'm the CEO for Black Swan Cybersecurity, but I'm also a college professor teaching cybersecurity, forensics, incident response, and criminal justice.
So, thank you, Mike. And I should also state here that with no obligation that has been presented from Mike, that we are in his facility and able to do this with his support. So thank you for your sponsorship all around, but particularly for making this happen for the next 3 days. Well, Vic, how about you?
Sure thing, and welcome to the rest of my fellow panelists. My name is Vic Molloy, and I'm with the University of Texas at San Antonio's Small Business Development Center Network. And just pleased as punch to be here with you all and to learn from the best practices that you all have put in place, and hopefully share what we've been doing here in the military city, USA.
Needless to say, the cyber Texas capital, right? Well, great. Well, I see Alex joining us too. So let's go get a quick intro from Alex.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Alex Bond, the Digital Equity Manager at the City and County of San Francisco. So we work on multiple projects and programs to bridge the digital divide, both when it comes to internet access, but also digital skills and digital literacy. And about a year and a half ago, we started to focus a lot more on cybersecurity because we noticed that many residents who were getting online for the first time, or maybe had lower digital skills and digital literacy, were also facing a lot of cybersecurity risk and impacts. So we had an intern, a graduate student intern, do a study on this that was published at UC Berkeley Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity. And then we also went and did a lot of training development focusing on nonprofits and small business, because we found that they were facing a lot of the same issues that community members were facing. So definitely pleased to be here and to talk with you all about how we can support more small businesses and small organizations in cybersecurity.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Matthew, your introduction, please.
Sure. I'm Matthew Schroeder. I do information security at Salesforce, but I'm also a fellow at the Aspen Tech Policy Hub, where I started getting interested in doing some research along with my partner, who unfortunately couldn't be here, Matt Sievers. We did research on policy, cybersecurity, and small businesses.
Great. Thank you and welcome you all. It's again, as I said, Alex, before you joined, we're going to keep this a little bit open. There are no prepared questions. We really here for the next hour or so to have a little bit of brainstorming. This first, until 12:50, and we'll take a break and come back for those who can come back. Again, we have Kiersten joining us from Cyber Readiness Institute. So at 1:10 Central, we'll go back again into how can we make it happen. So let me give you a quick 2 minutes on our journey in the last summer as we put our focus on this area. When COVID started, the pandemic started rolling out in waves. The first wave hit the businesses very, very hard. Humanity, I would say, didn't know how to deal with this, still as learning, and nobody had a playbook for this. And especially hit where the small businesses who had to shutter down physically. So they were struggling for survival. And like many businesses, big or small, many consumers or citizens, everybody had to go work online and find a way to reach out to each other and still keep the economy going. When 40% of the economy, which is the small business, that's what represents, especially in the US, if you look at the other countries, maybe more, we have really left small businesses underserved in cybersecurity. And I say this with as much remorse as conviction I have, is that we can fix that. I think we apply ourselves into this. Cybersecurity industry has been primarily, focused on helping, supporting, and shoring up the defenses of larger organizations, of the countries, of national economies. And when I say that part is dealing with the big businesses. And it has recently gone to the consumer level, I think. But what it skipped over is small businesses. And in that case, if you look at the resources that are required to make cybersecurity effective and efficient, larger organizations are struggling to hire people, buy tech gear and put it in place. It's very complicated, right? I mean, I can't imagine my day job at EY. We typically deal with Fortune 500 companies and end up working with smaller businesses who form a real and critical part of the supply chain. And that increases the threat landscape and the third-party risk that we carry. And I would say the nth party risk that we carry. And that is not acceptable. So we got to fix this problem. In our journey and kind of prospecting as to how we can fix, we identified, and that's how got introduced to Matthew here and a lot of our other colleagues, is that people have really done a good job in terms of assimilating information that is available to small businesses that they can put into practice. But the way cybersecurity is threat landscape is, it's very asymmetric. The scales skewed in terms of the good people versus the not so good people, and very opportunistic criminals who are also part of this game. And it's costly. It's still not at a scale that can be supported by small businesses. Hiring a cybersecurity professional is about 100 grand, right? I mean, some businesses are 100 grand businesses. Okay, so how can we make it affordable, and how can we make it commercially viable for small business to capture? So on this journey, what we learned, there's a great amount of information that needs to be curated, and that is the journey that we took up on. We realized that there are healthcare packages, there are economic care packages. Let's actually put together a cyber care package. Probably that will bridge the digital divide that you're talking about, Alex, and you've been tasked to, that people feel secure to use, and both in terms of the career prospect as well as in terms of securing their own businesses, right? So the next thing that we identified was that there are the tech sector also, the commercial offerings are out from the tech sector, out of the 2,000-3,000 cyber technologies companies that are out there, and many startups that come up every day. Well, we don't see that in pandemic, but actually there are, believe me or not, we just spoke with our friends in Israel. They're funding cybersecurity startups like by the minute. So the tech sector has also to commercialize this in a way that is accessible and affordable, and the scales of economies support that requirement from the small business. The third aspect is the support part, and that's what we call support kit. I think it's great to know and learn what is cybersecurity, what does it mean for small businesses, get the awareness up, maybe buy a couple of technologies and tools that will help you secure that. And small businesses do operate a significant amount of that is technology itself. But where is the support? Who do they call? I mean, I walked into my barber's shop, and it's a small chain of 4 mom and pop business. Really nice people. On a regular day would walk in, get service, not have to wait, and great way to interact with the local business. But when COVID happened, they went online. And as they went online, I wanted to get an appointment. So I went to the website, put in my phone number and the contact, and looked at my appointment. And then on my way, as curious, probably any cyber professional is, I went out and I looked at what I can see from them, and with the permission of the owner. So you can actually download the entire customer base in few keystrokes. Which of course the owner didn't really appreciate often they saw, and I think that was a wake-up call for them. And imagine if that's one barbershop, how many are there who were operating physically and now are operating digitally, right? So I think that support and that setup was done by a young nephew who was in high school and really did a good job in terms of customer experience, but security, I'm sorry, didn't work out. So I think those 3 things need to be part of a journey. You need to have a curation of the information, which we'll talk about with our friends of Cyber Readiness Institute in the next hour, our friends at Global Cyber Alliance, Matthew and Matt's work at the Aspen Tech Policy Hub. All together needs to be curated and supported by a technology platform or a suite of technologies that can support this commercially in a level of economy that can support small businesses. And then finally, a support infrastructure that we need to put together nationally that can take this. But when I say nationally, the emphasis has to be regional, and that's why we have 2 big regions represented here. And we also have the discussions that we had with our friends in Dallas, our friends in New York City. They're also looking for the same set of solutions. So I think we need to brainstorm to come up to that. Finally, putting it all together is pretty much what it is. Cyber care packages. I think if cyber professionals cannot reach out directly, even if they do, I don't think they will be as effective as reaching out to what Alex is doing, what Vic you are doing, and where small businesses actually go for help and learning, right? So with that, let me open up the floor. Satish, I'll start with you. Little bit share your experience, and then we'll go around this room and speak about what we need to do to address this problem.
No, that's a great prelude, Val. Actually, as you said, the small businesses are looking for simplification, and having a cyber care package like what you mentioned is what is really, really important to enable them. So my journey experience has been like I'll start with awareness, and that's where we all know that the small businesses have very little awareness. So we need to educate them a lot on why they need to act on cybersecurity. That's the first hurdle they need to get past. But then some of them get past that, then they get a limited awareness. They say, hey, my thing is already in cloud, or I have a solution, I'm already covered. So it's kind of a wrong awareness, if you will, which is pretty dangerous than not having any awareness. So they think they are already covered, and they have an IT person who is already there, who is the cybersecurity person. IT and cybersecurity has no differentiation for them as well. So I think that limited awareness started kicking in as well. I see it. And then some of them even asked me, why are you selling us tornado insurance? Tornado never comes to us. So I think I realized that I literally failed for first 2 years in educating the healthcare industry about cybersecurity. Then I decided to back it up. I went to the dean of a medical school and said, I think we need to create a habit here. It's a cultural change. We need to change that. And then the only way is to instill cyber hygiene even before they leave their schools. So I think that's kind of is the cultural change. We got to bring it up. It's not, it's a one time, it's a journey. We all have to take through. But then let's say they get past that and we see more and more awareness with the COVID situation, a lot of remote working, people started realizing they need to act on cybersecurity faster. So the awareness is also increasing. But at the same time, when they pass that hurdle, they come to the next stop, which is the cost versus benefit. I understand I need to act on it, but is it something which is priority for my business? Or is it, what is the cost? What's the benefit? So I think they are getting hung up at that point, and they also don't have inherent in-house resources or competence to help them as well. So lack of resources, lack of budget comes into play. So I think that's where we actually really have to make sure we are helping them, enabling them in the right way. And I think, Val, what you said is perfectly valid, that unless we simplify this, it's a big abstract when you talk on cybersecurity to small businesses. The more simplification we do for them, the better they're going to adapt it. So with that thought, I'll give it back to Val.
Thank you, Satish. I think that's personal experience, trumps anything else. And I think that if you are able to teach cybersecurity and awareness to seasoned doctors, I think it will be it's a good start. And then we go down, and then we meet in the middle, probably, right? So next, let me go to Mike. I think, Mike, you have had a pretty broad experience in serving not only enterprises, customers, but also smaller utilities and schools and regions, right? So what is your perspective in terms of where the demand is and where are we meeting?
Well, I think the demand is probably pretty equal. I think the understanding of security and how to apply it is probably also pretty equal. The majority difference between small and large businesses is their budget and possibly some of the requirements that are imposed on them to implement security. But if we go back to some of the fundamental things, the education, what is cyber? What does it mean to me? How do I apply it? In a lot of organizations, when you talk about applying cybersecurity, especially small businesses, the immediate thought is applying it to everything instead of really focusing on where the value is, what's the importance, what are you trying to protect, and then from a compliance, and whether that's regulatory or contractual or client expectations, really focusing in on that and putting scope around it. So there's a lot of activities that can happen, from education to scoping to being creative, that can really support the small business, or really any business, but specifically small business, and really understanding what security means. Once you have an idea of that, how do I apply it to those areas that really make sense? So your scope, and then also back to Satish's comment about, this has to be a cultural change. This isn't a project where we're applying security and checking them. And again, as we've migrated to this remote workforce, or for those companies that have a remote workforce, that's got to be a constant reminder about security. Security's got to become ingrained in everything you do. And today, especially with simply just checking your email and the risks and things to be aware of there. But I think email is a great example of a security control that can be implemented at almost zero cost. If you know how to configure your email to identify external email versus an internal email, that would go a long way to preventing some of these phishing campaigns and email compromises. And it's already part of what you purchased. You just got to be educated in how to use the tools that you have. the capabilities that you have. And then in the absence of being capable of that, finding a good partner, someone that you can trust to support you in those areas that you need help with. All of that can be done affordably. I've seen it in, mom and pop. Yeah, I haven't been to a barbershop in a while, but I have worked with small companies, small mom and pop shops, $100,000 revenue, all the way up to $5 billion revenue companies. Some of those fundamental things are consistent. The difference is the budget. But it's all doable once you have a good understanding and a good scope, a good approach, and a good collaborative environment of either your own people or your partners.
Yeah, no, that's well said, Mike. And I think as we learn from this pandemic and how to kind of reinvent the whole cybersecurity for small businesses, we'll probably get to discover that. So thank you. Let's move to Vic. I think between you and Alex and of course Matthew, we're going to see a little bit of voice of the customer and also the ones that we're going to deal with. We are intent on making sure that we engage with the right group of people, as Mike and I and our other partners put it together. We want to make sure we are informed. So Vic, for your inputs, please.
Sure thing. And great comments with regards to awareness and education. And with that being said, my prior life, right before working with the University of Texas, San Antonio, was working with a nonprofit. And the nonprofit was Cyber Texas Foundation. And the purpose of the nonprofit was to look at the K through 12, the school age students. What can we do to elevate those pathways so that the next generation of digital natives have that on-ramp in a more, mindful way? So we do that through clubs, competitions, and curriculum. Our flagship program, and I think a lot of you have probably heard of it, is the Cyber Patriot program that's been promoted by the Air Force Association. We were one of the first communities to become recognized as a center of excellence, and that we partnered with industry, academia, and government. We just so happen to be located with the Air Force's cyber headquarters command here in the San Antonio area, and got buy-in from the leadership there. We got buy-in from the city mayor to say, hey, look, we want to recognize these students that are in middle school and high school who are learning the practical skills in how to secure a Windows operating system, how to go into the Linux operating system and secure that environment, and then take it to the next level to look at an entire network and build a secure ecosystem. And not only to do it as a form of a competition, but to be practical in the space. I always like to tell a couple of stories of why this is relevant. I was coaching a team and one of the students was failing. He was in a rural community, and I'm going like, well, what's going on with you, Matt? And Matt said, well, this just doesn't interest me. So come to find out, he had been building remote access tools since he was 13 years old. That was 10 years ago. And so here I am sitting, working in the Department of Defense at that time, going like, well, what can we better do to serve him? So fast forward, where's Matt at now? He has opened up his second business where he's doing managed services, provided managed services. He hired his brother, who separated from the Air Force, to be his chief technical officer. And now he is, at the forefront of the next gen population to support those small businesses. Say, hey, look, while you may not be able to go out there and create a network operating center, to secure your taco stand or your small insurance company or service that you have, because a lot of what we do here in San Antonio is with the hospitality community, let us, be that trusted partner to help you. Another case story, like I always like to talk about, we just had with our University of Texas, San Antonio cyber range, we brought in high school students and undergraduate students and said, hey, look, we're going to create a hyper realistic environment to simulate that you are a SOC analyst. And in this SOC analyst role, you and your team have to resolve and mitigate a distributed denial of attack scenario. So we went step by step. We took 6 teams. The number 1 team was from a high school graduate that, oh, by the way, were the national champions in the AFA Cyber Patriot program, and they beat out undergraduate and graduate students. And to be even more dynamic, the next generation that's coming behind them finished 3rd place. They had 2 sophomore Latinas on the team, first time ever being in a competition, first time ever being in the range. And to watch and observe them, I wouldn't even be able to know that, because it said, okay, I'm on the scene and I'm looking at the event log and this activity is going. And I know we're supposed to be going after, the mitigation route, where do I apply our tools? And it was just phenomenal to see the competency that's in our youth population today. So how do we take that to small businesses? We need to go to the small business community and say, hey, look, your profit, your schedule, your performance is all predicated upon having a foundation of security in your environment. And if you don't see the value in that, then you don't understand what risk mitigation is. I mean, you have insurance to transfer risk. So we need to communicate in those terms that a business owner understands that, hey, look, cybersecurity is not an add-on or even a pillar. It's your foundation, because that foundation will then give you the resiliency to build upon cost mitigation efforts, schedule, so that you can, make sure that you have high availability, because we talk about the CIA triad. That's how you communicate it to them. You say, look, this is about availability. This is about you being on schedule. This is about protecting that consumer information at your point of sale, so that that young, teenager that you have, working at your drive-through window isn't doing social media surfing on the same network that you're doing your point of sale. So with that, I'll stand back, but it's just exciting to be, part of this panel to hear what everyone else is learning.
That's great. Thank you, Vic. I think that's a very real world representation of what we live today. And I'm glad you went through the journey with Cyber Texas, great organization. And thank you for bringing that knowledge forward. So let me hand it over to Alex in terms of the thoughts that you have and you're seeing. I would say, a little bit color from your findings that you got published as well. So to you, Alex.
Yeah, I agree with everything that the other panelists have said about this needing to be a culture change. Us needing to simplify cybersecurity for folks and really demystify it, because I think there's a lot of misperception around what it is and what it isn't. I feel that a lot of small business owners or nonprofit directors think that cybersecurity is just buying a product, buying like an antivirus, and then all their cybersecurity needs are taken care of, and they don't really understand the importance of training and the human element, and just like having both them and their staff aware of just basic cyber hygiene practices. And then I also think that this idea of cost benefit analysis and just folks not really understanding the value that this could add and why they should invest time in it is a real thing, right? So even when we get them to buy into this idea of training, I often get a lot of pushback, like, I can't force my staff to sit through, the 2-hour mandatory training on cybersecurity. I just can't afford that, or, it's just not something that a lot of folks are willing to invest in. And yeah, I mean, that's really the barrier. So how do we, support folks on this kind of culture change journey to demystify things and to get them to embrace training, and then also for them to understand, that there are some really low cost or free, just low hanging fruit things that they can do to make their organizations more secure. One example that always comes to mind for me is this small community health clinic, that I've worked with, and they hold so much information, both for their own staff as well as their patients, and they haven't configured their email right to check for external senders. So phishing was just rampant, and they didn't have 2-factor authentication on on their payroll systems. So basically, they got phished. One of their finance staff, gave away their login information for their entire payroll and HR system, and all their staff records were exposed. So if they just had this basic information, basic cyber hygiene information, that could have been easily resolved. But yeah, who are the folks that are out there that could really help each organization through that journey and to understand these things? We've tried to do a lot of just workshop based training, but we often hear that it really takes, like, people really want someone that could come out to their organization, come out to their site and sit down with them to walk them through these things and to like go over very specific questions that they have on their systems. So yeah, how do we develop a care package and like a national service that could really offer these types of services at scale, right? Those are some of the questions that I would like us to discuss. And then the other thing is, how can we get the technology industry to more fully embrace security by default or security by design, right? Like, if you're a payroll system vendor, I feel like you should have multi-factor authentication by default, right? You shouldn't ask the user or the administrator to enable that, and you shouldn't give them that option in this day and age. So, what are some things that we can do to continue to push that message forward? Yeah, so I'll end there.
Yeah, sure. No, that's really kind of fascinating in terms of what all we have to go through as large organizations, and then the smaller organization facing the same, and how can we bridge the gap that both get the same level of service at the economies and commercial ways they can find, and also who can we get in front of. This actually pairs really well with the program that we are doing on the other side in terms of supply, because there are not enough people to be staffed in programs and projects that are funded, and then we are talking about a place where there's need for not only education awareness but also a little of monetary support and funding. We need a little bit of push, a little bit of financial care package together with the cyber care package, right? One cannot be one cannot be supportive of the or cannot live without the other, because we are putting in money and all the incentives, small business loans and everything is going to small businesses. I hope they get more, but that's also a liability on for the banks and all and financial institutions that are giving out, and which in one ransomware attack or something, this whole business is wiped out. That's the loss that financial institutions need to care about, right? So with that thought, let me turn to Matthew. And Matthew, you and Matt's work has been tremendously helpful. You got a treasure trove of information that you put together. And that was actually where we started off. I mean, halfway through your work, the information was good enough for us to, or I think great enough for us to get started. We didn't have to rework any of that. So I request you a little bit of your findings from the work in the summer, as well as your learnings from it that you want us to take away.
Sure. Happy to share. So from an Aspen Tech Policy Hub perspective, the work that our team did there, we tackled the problem from kind of the perspective of how can governments get small businesses to take effective cybersecurity actions. We settled on governments from a policy perspective because we know that they have a very big, there's a very big importance in governments having secure small businesses that they do that for their vendors. For example, like looking at California has over a $200 billion budget, and they have, like many states, a goal for small business spending. So I think California's is around like 25%. So you can kind of do the math that the government spend a lot of money in small businesses, and they really need those small businesses to be secure. So one of the things that we did in our research was we kind of started from the small business perspective and said, okay, well, what's available out there? And from some of our research, it was just tons of stuff. I think we went through, there's 40, 50, 60 plus documents that we looked over. It was good on one hand because, okay, there's a lot of resources out there, but there's bad on the other hand because there's a lot of resources out there, and it's a lot of, what do I use? Where do I go to? A lot of the documents very well-meaning, but things that small business owners would probably cause their eyes to glaze over a little bit. stuff that they just wouldn't be able to take in or necessarily have the expertise. Some very dense documents, we came across a document that was just very holistic and was unfortunately like 100 pages. So unfortunately, you could imagine how that might be hard for a small business owner to really take in. So kind of the findings echoed a lot of what has been mentioned already in the panel. Things that are having clear and consistent expectations and standards for small business owners is a really big one. Part of our research, we looked at different regulations, different standards across localities in California, in different regions. And that's also how we got to talk with Alex with regards to the state or the city of San Francisco. And we realized that, there's just a lot of different requirements. There are tweaks. Some of them are similar. There's some efforts for making them kind of similar standards and regulations, but it has a ways to go specifically to really get them to a place where it's very clear for a small business owner to say, I have to do X, Y, and Z, and then I've kind of met the bar to do business with, the state government or the local government or at whatever level. So clear and consistent, doing things early in the process. So we talked with people from the Small Business Development Center. So a lot of small businesses, they start out and they go through some sort of local support group like the Small Business Development Center. And so those centers will provide advice and guidance on things, various parts of the business. But one gap that we found was there was not a lot of support necessarily for cybersecurity and data privacy and data protection, things along those lines. So we thought that there's definitely an opportunity there to kind of improve. This is where we can plug in basically and get kind of security early in the process. If we can help to find these points where when small businesses start up, they go to these groups and these groups have the right guidance, or they have this care package like Val was mentioning that they can provide these small businesses so that they can be secure, along with, as we mentioned before, kind of the clear and consistent, these are the things that you're expected to do. And if you do, X, Y, and Z things, then you're covered, at least for the current time period. And kind of the vision that we kind of came up with, or we saw, that seemed like kind of the best approach to the future was kind of trying to figure out a way to make cybersecurity business as usual for small businesses. Like when the small businesses start up, they have to figure out, if they're going to do, when they do their taxes, for example, are they going to do their taxes in-house? Or are they going to hire someone out to do their taxes? A lot of companies, small and especially the medium businesses, will have someone else do their taxes. But that's just assumed as part of the business. You got to pay your taxes. And our vision for the future is hopefully getting to a point where people understand that for cybersecurity and privacy, that they understand that, we got to do our cybersecurity and privacy. And these are, the services that we can go to get that done, or these are the things that we clearly need to do. So I could go on for a while about, the different research stuff that we did specifically in the website that we developed and stuff like that. But I'll just kind of pause here and leave this as kind of initial background of what we did.
Of course, no, thank you, Matthew. I think that's a good summary. I think, of course, as you said, this whole research of yours could take the entire day or two to get into each area and bring that meaningfully to the small businesses. But I think that's our longer journey that we're going to go on to, right? So with that, Satish, next round, I think I want to let you ask some probing questions and see what information and on what input you want to collect for us as we put together this package.
Awesome. Definitely, Val. So I think one of the things I learned in this journey with SMBs is the way to move them forward is to show the peers. If I talk to a provider or a small business, say, why need to act? The best way of, instead of me telling them to act, I bring them a peer who has already acted on it so that they get motivated. So my question is more based on your experiences and research, who are the early adapters in SMB space who has adapted cybersecurity? What made them to move quicker than the rest? What were those characteristics which you identified? Those are the kind of patterns which always kicks in and they act fast. Maybe I'll start with Alex to start with.
Yeah, I haven't really identified too many early adopters. But I would say that the ones that I have seen that are more cybersecurity advanced, they just have someone on their staff that are into it or that know the importance of it. And it's kind of that in-house ambassador, in-house change agent that pushes it forward. I would say that's the case in general. And then, of course, when we talk about the nonprofit side, typically the larger, more established nonprofits, who are able to fund like an IT, managed support service provider or something like that. They're the ones who typically have the kind of the cybersecurity procedures. They have the mandatory staff trainings. The challenges for the others who can't afford these types of practices and who just rely on like one very tech savvy, staff members to kind of be their IT team.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are falling behind. So yeah, you either have the resources, to get IT, to get some kind of managed service provider to help you think through these things. And, usually those people will bring the cybersecurity perspective, or you just happen to you luck into just having in-house kind of ambassador or change agent to push these things forward. And to really call out like, wow, this is crazy. We need to really tighten up some of these security practices.
No, I hear you, because I've seen that as well. There are a few percentage of folks who are technically savvy as well in the small businesses who are very curious how to protect themselves. And those are all great in-house competence. At the same time, having the resources to listen to somebody like an MSSP who can come and educate them, that's a great way to learn quickly and move fast. I see that. Great points.
Just one thing to add, another thing I noticed obviously is just the news cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
That often like just, if you see a business similar to yours, if there's a big ransomware story about that, or if they've gotten hacked, right? That tends to spur interest, and people start to like attend workshops. And when we ask them why they attend, they're like, "Oh, we just saw in the news that such and such, happened," or ransomware is a big thing right now, and we want to get on top of that. So the news cycle, it drives interest. I wouldn't say that it drives adoption, but it will be kind of like the first. It'll get people to take that first step.
Gotcha. No, definitely. Vic, what is your experiences? Who moved faster?
Yeah. So I was going to piggyback right on what Alex just hit on. Last summer, not 2020, but 2019, there were 22 counties in the state of Texas that got hit simultaneously with the ransomware attack. And it brought them back down to, pen and paper. And we had to deploy our National Guard and get our Texas Military Department mobilized to help recover the organization to make them well. So we just had great support from our Texas Department of Information Resources team, and the state CIO and regional leaders all just coalesced and said, hey, look, we've got to build resiliency in our community plan. And it just so happened it coincided with our Cyber Texas conference. And so we had some partners from Houston. We even had a leader from the city of Atlanta come in and share their story of how they survived and recovered after the malware attack that hit the city of Atlanta. So as what Alex said, the news cycle, and then I would even say, the pandemic that we're in right now mirrors what we as information security professionals have been talking about for the longest, is that the next cyber Armageddon is going to cripple us to the point that, while we're communicating on this means, when you hit the SCADA or the ICS in a way that you take down critical nodes, guess what? We are not communicating. And, how do we survive to attack in that environment? And how do we harden ourselves so that we can, reconstitute the connectivity that's needed? So I'm excited about seeing what 5G brings to bear, but to the point of the small business and changing those mindsets, it unfortunately has to be built upon learning from the unfortunate outcomes of others, so that there is a paradigm shift to say, hey, look, this is, a clear and present danger. And in other cases, like coming right now with the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, the government is now mandating, hey, look, we gave you the NIST and we said that we want you to do a self-assessment to put these 171 principles into place. In the next 5 years, they're going to now assess you. And so when the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification Accreditation Board, which is currently already certified 50 assessors, and they're going to grow that whole population to address the over 200,000 plus vendors who are now doing business with the government. So while you may say I'm a small business and I'm not doing direct, they're looking at the entire supply chain to say, okay, well, who are these people that are supplying you, and have they been independently assessed to level 1, level 2, or level 3 in their maturity model, and how they've adapted those practical controls and documented it, and then had an independent assessment. So in 2026, you know, more and more, the way you're going to operate is, like I said before, is you have to have that foundation of a security environment and a security culture, so that your cost, your schedule, and your performance is now, you know, assessed and independently validated, that, you know, your business is, you know, going to, you know, be, you know, profitable moving forward, be secure moving forward, so that, you know, it's not just having, you know, your annual security awareness training in place, but that you have a security culture in place, to where, you know, you've got your records in place, you've got the documentation, but along with the documentation, there's application and practical use of how you're securing your environment. So I love the other story that I like to refer to, the mariachi band example. Well, you're a mariachi band, you know, what's cybersecurity got to do with me? Well, you have a website, you've got mobile applications, you're promoting yourself, and you're out there collecting money from people, you know, digitally. Have you assessed yourself to determine what are those weak points that you need to, you know, lock down, so that you can continue to making that beautiful mariachi music? So we need to just kind of break those barriers down as to how we communicate as even information security professionals in the community.
Yeah, no, great points. I think one theme which resonate across all your feedback is the external drivers. When I call this external, it's not because of a proactive initiative from small businesses. They're still in a reactive mode. They are driven by ransomware, somebody being impacted. They see that, and then they want to react on it, make sure they are doing the right thing. Or compliance, like CMMC, which is, again, I need to be compliant. So it's all external drivers is what I see in the market as well. Great points. Matthew, what is your take on who are really moving faster?
Yeah, I mean, I echo all those points. Really great stuff. I would say one thing that we've seen too, kind of in addition, is that sometimes, especially when you have kind of a business that does standard basic, you know, we sell stuff, you know, we have customers, things like that. They don't need a lot of specialized software. If they're using cloud services or you know, software that's already kind of mature, known secure, nothing's really perfectly secure. Obviously, you can still fail badly, and Google or Amazon are using all those services. But if they're using, at least taking the first step to use services that have some sort of security, privacy aware designs and maturity kind of built into them, that tends to help a lot, because then that's less that they have to really focus on from the security and privacy side. And, you know, they have these companies that have much more resources and much more, you know, need to build in security and privacy, kind of building those resources for them specifically. So that tends to help out a lot of small businesses if they start out with kind of some of those mature services that can be offered, not just to big and large, but small businesses can use them as well.
Great points. Agree with that. Mike, what is your perspective on this?
Well, I think outsourcing as much as you can is definitely a good you know, way to transfer the risk. Is make sure you invested in some good attorneys and contract review. But continuing the kind of the theme of, well, maybe just my perspective of that theme is consistent in that I think the early adopters are those that are required to do so. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Why do it until we're required to do so? But two, why are we going to invest in something that may not be aligned with what we're required to do in the future? There's some best practice cyber hygiene things that everybody should do. But as far as implementing a framework, I think you really need to understand your business, your strategy, where your roadmap, or where you're going to go, so that you can put some good thought and strategy into how you implement cyber. Alex's comment about having cyber passionate people, I think, is just good for your culture. They're going to want to implement good practices anyway. Unfortunately, in an environment that doesn't want to formally implement cyber, you've got these informal practices which you really don't get credit for. But I think what we're going to see is, as the industry kind of turns over on itself with layoffs and force reductions due to COVID and some other things, that those skilled, experienced cyber people are going to want to go work for these smaller companies if they can afford them, and hopefully that'll help at least introduce the culture of cyber to those companies. And then the next adopters of cyber are those that are growing and want to become better and instill best practices for any number of reasons. One, you can market that. You can put that on your website. We are certified ISO 27001 or GDPR, some of these others, and that's a good way to instill confidence in your customers. Just making sure that you pick the right framework that aligns with your business model. And then I think ultimately, one of my goals from an education perspective is to try and build some sort of cyber education into business degrees, like an MBA or something along those lines, so that future business executives have already been exposed to what cyber means. So there's less of a misconception there. But secondly, when the topic comes up, they're a little bit more informed and ahead of the game, so that conversation hopefully goes a lot smoother and with a little bit more interest and understanding.
No, great point, Mike. I think particularly the point about differentiating a firm from others. Cybersecurity is not only a way to protect your business, but also to differentiate again among your competitors. To your point of having an ISO certification, that's where we want to be. Cybersecurity is an enabler rather than not being a kind of, it's not a NO team where it stops everything from running, or right. So I think that's a great point. So I think if I sum up the theme, who are the early adapters who are doing this? Obviously, the in-house competence, the awareness, whoever has high has moved faster. Then the drivers like compliance, which is, again, has played a lot of part as well. And then obviously the ransomware and the peer pressure, peer experience. The one other thing I also see this is the business assurance for third party, for the larger organization. The smaller vendors are asked to provide ISO certification or provide their HIPAA or HITRUST or whichever certification. So they are driven by those external kind of forces as well. So I think still I would say it's reactive, but still the theme is more starting with awareness, compliance, business assurance, and differentiation is where I see as a scale of the early adapters moving forward. But great points. I really appreciate sharing all of this. So I think we got another 5 minutes. So what is, if I can ask one more, some of the common cyber awareness myths, anything we can bust for the team, or anything we should, what is the misconceptions when it comes to awareness? We all talked about that's the fundamental genesis of all of this, adapting. Is there any myth we need to bust here, or anything you would like to, go ahead, please.
Yeah, the one that always gets me is, oh, well, I don't have an IT guy, or well, I have an IT guy and he's going to fix it. And once he fixes it, it's done. And it's like, no, it's not one and done. It's a continuous process, and everyone has a role and a responsibility. While you may not be doing reverse malware engineering, you need to make sure that your folks are not on the phone getting vished and then getting smished and then getting phished, simultaneously going like, well, what just happened? They need to be just as involved in the process as everyone else.
What about Alex?
Yeah, I think I touched on this before, but the myth that like, Oh, I'm already, I've already installed antivirus on all my computers, so I'm cyber secure. I'm done.
Too. Yeah, Matthew, what is your take on that? What is the one big thing we should break upon? They should not think it's a myth; it's a reality.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of perception out there that, and maybe this isn't as much of a myth right now, but I'd like to make it a myth. Hopefully, we'd like to make it a myth. Hopefully, in the future, is that like cybersecurity privacy is like impossible. It's this huge hurdle that we just don't have the resource, we can't ever do. And that's not true. And that's the thing, is that we need to do a better job of, as we've all talked about in this panel, of putting together, making it easy, making it clear, making it built into the process. But I think that's a lot of what we talked about with businesses. They're like, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to go. I don't think we can do it. We can't afford to do it. We don't have the time to do it. So we're just going to hope for the best. And so that's one myth I'd definitely like to bust, is companies don't have to just hope for the best.
Gotcha. Fantastic point. And what about Mike? What's your take on that?
I agree. I think one of the biggest myths is that, well, there are a couple maybe, and they all revolve around cost, that we can't afford cyber. I think it's a general misconception, and that has to do a lot with understanding what cyber means and what it means for your organization. Mm-hmm. And the second thing, I think, especially this year with how much the cyber training has changed, that we can't afford cyber training. There's so many free resources out there today, or low cost resources, but that's no longer an excuse. And I think what we've seen over the years with cybersecurity, especially in North Texas, it's such a collaborative industry that is just full of people that are willing to share and mentor. And if you buy me lunch and coffee, I'll come train your environment. And that's how a lot of us are. We want to share. And so you just got to reach out and take the first step. I think another misconception is that Apple environments are more secure than Windows environments.
Right.
My last misconception is that 30 years in IT makes you lose your hair. But I'll end there.
Right. No, I think great points. I think some of the things which I also hear about is I am a small fish, and if large folks like Experian gets hacked, why should I even act on it? And then my usual story is, if there is a village anywhere it's going to be looted, everybody thinks we'll keep the doors open. And then there are two houses. One house is with the doors locked, and the other house has doors and windows open. The thief is going to come and look at the house, which is part of least resistance. You go to the house which is more open rather than just closed. So I think at least we should do the basic cyber hygiene. Let's not worry about making 100% thing, but let's take step by step. Keep the doors and windows locked. That's my comment when it comes to the net. So great point.
If I could add just one more misconception, is that people think that they won't get attacked if they're an unknown, unpopular, unmarketed company. Why would somebody target us? And in a lot of cases, understanding that it may be no reason at all, except for some automated network internet search that found a vulnerability that some bad guy's really good at. So I think there's a big misconception that we're just a small company, nobody knows us, so we're not a target.
And in fact, they are the most vulnerable one the hackers can come after, since they have the least resources, the least tools to protect themselves. They are the most vulnerable across.
Easy money.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's great. No, this is great going. I think if I can field one more question to keep our conversation going, if you all don't mind. We listen all about penalties, and I think this is my personal view as well. When it comes to compliance and other things, the government is trying to enforce them to comply. And when I talk to healthcare providers, some of them probably would have seen the breach portal from HHS, where all the providers who got hacked, it's all listed. When they show them, they get offended. We are already doing a service to this whole world, but now we are getting penalized. So instead, if you flip that penalty into an incentive from a government perspective, will that make a change? That's I just want to hear your thoughts. How do we make the industry to absorb this? Because they don't want to be penalized. They don't want to go on that route. Rather, if we support them with some incentives, is my point. Please go ahead. Anyone want to take a take?
I'll be the first to chime in. I think that's difficult, to reward or incent an organization, at least under the assumption of some kind of financial incentive, is difficult because it's difficult to measure cyber on any given day. That could change, or even from the morning to the afternoon. You could have a great implementation and a great posture and controls in place. But it goes back to the idea that cyber is not a project. It's not an implementation. It's an ongoing living thing that has to be monitored and maintained and ingrained every day. So I think perhaps incenting someone for having done it might be the wrong approach versus continuous demonstration of the effectiveness of that as a qualification for something else, like a government contract or a tax break or something along those lines might maybe be a better approach.
Interesting thought. Great. Val, do you want to chime in, or what's your take on this? Or
Yeah, I would just go on and on about this, but I think this is probably the right time also to get Kiersten introduced. I see Kiersten has already joined. I don't know if she's doing double duty still, but hopefully you're able to join this panel. So it's already very active and going on the discussion, the route that we wanted to, Kiersten. So welcome. So maybe we start with a quick intro, Kiersten, for the panelists here and the audience who are joining us online.
Sure. So I'm Kiersten Todt. I'm the managing director of the Cyber Readiness Institute. And the Cyber Readiness Institute was launched after our work on President Obama's independent commission on enhancing national cybersecurity, with the concept that one of the issues that President Obama had asked us to look at was small business cybersecurity, and we felt we really had only brushed the surface. And I think that's because we continue in small businesses to say, just take what the big companies are doing and shrink it down to what you do. And that can't happen. I make the analogy to pediatric medicine. For a long time, we just took adult medicine and said, make it small for kids. And while the destination is the same, a healthy human being, similarly with small businesses, the destination is the same, a healthy, secure business. But how we get there is very different because small businesses don't have the resources that large companies do. So the Cyber Readiness Institute launched a 5-stage self-guided free program looking at how small businesses can really get that foundation of security focused on human behavior. And we focus on phishing, patching, USB use, and authentication, with the idea that these are issues that every individual can have an impact on. And so the idea is, by creating a culture of cybersecurity, you're ensuring that your employees are educated and trained and informed, and that they have the accountability and responsibility for their role in cybersecurity. So it's not just something that's deflected or that they haven't internalized, because we all know that human beings can be your greatest vulnerability, but they can be your greatest asset. And that really is where training, education all comes to it. And in addition to this, the free program, we've also created free resources for the pandemic on securing a remote workforce, securing a hybrid workforce, and additional resources on a ransomware, given what the uptick in both ransomware and phishing that we've seen. So it's great to be a part of this panel. Thanks for having me join a little bit late, but look forward to the discussion.
Well, thank you, Kiersten. This is it's great to have you and connect the dots over the last work, our collaboration over the summer, and also learning from you as we go. And we didn't have to take we got a jump start, of course, with Kiersten's work and with the rest of the crew here. Kiersten, just to get you introduced to them. I don't know if you've met everybody before, but we have Satish Gopalaswamy, who is a practitioner in this field, has served small businesses, helps hospitals and small medical facilities get acquainted and learn cybersecurity as quickly as they can. And then he's got this it's a painful but as well as very productive journey forward. We have Vic Molloy, who's from the UT San Antonio, and has been part of the cyber ecosystem in San Antonio. Now helps the Small Business Economic Development Institute there to support and directly connect with small business and take it forward to where this should go. We have Matthew Schroeder. Maybe you know him already, but his apart from his day job at Salesforce, he's actually committed himself to taking small business to a higher state of cybersecurity. He spent time with Aspen Tech Policy Hub as a fellow, and a great amount of work that we are doing, and the research is influenced and informed by what Matthew and his colleague Matt have done. Then we have Alex from City of San Francisco, has got generously introduced by Matthew and Matt to Alex, and his colleague the Matt Marksman at the City of San Francisco. They are actively working on this, and with other organizations. And then finally we have Mike Saylor, our partner in the journey of putting a cyber care package together from Black Swan Cybersecurity. He spends more time on community, helping and serving the community, training young people. Then probably he does his business, but he does his business so well, I think he can do both. Then both of them can survive together. So we got a pretty good discussion going on about the different aspects. Last hour, we kind of walked through what are the different challenges that we are seeing and the issues that we need to deal with. I think with you joining, it completes the forum in terms of what are the components and of this solution package, and what should we consider in terms of putting a cyber care package together. At the outset, I shared with the team here, and I have actually had one-on-one with most of them, and especially with Mike, been working this solutioning angle, where I think this should be a journey that is curated, really and actively and direct engagement to the regional centers where small business actually go to. So get an information kit out that you have so productively put together. I see the Cyber Readiness Institute every day come, with new content, and just gives me hope there are people who are working hard to make this happen. And in fact, I think Matthew and Mark also joined the Global Cyber Alliance Fuels organization as advisors. So that's probably kind of this, not necessarily the second stop. I mean, it can start from anywhere, but I think curating the journey to get there. Right now, I think small businesses, when we talk about it, I founded the pavement, as I shared with you earlier, going door to door and talking to small businesses. They're very overwhelmed with this topic, and they want to see what direction can we give them. And I think Cyber Readiness Institute becomes the first stop in their journey. They go along, learn about cybersecurity and what it means for small businesses, and they probably go get some self-help with assessments and toolkits that GCA has built, and they call up Mike. Probably the third stop is where they can get some support and get engaged with professionals such as Gopal, who's Satish, who's been spending time at small businesses and knows how to deal with them, right? So we have to tackle this collectively, build all these components together, bring all the partners together, and collaboratively solve this national problem, which before too long may become national crisis, or may already is, that you don't know, that I don't, Kiersten. So for the second round, I would like to go, probably just Kiersten just talked about Cyber Readiness Institute. Matthew, if you can, please let us know what are your thoughts from your research from the solution component side. There's a lot of information, right? But what is missing that we need to put together in this kit?
Sure. So from the solution perspective, I think that we kind of came up with a carrot and a stick type approach. I think we talked about this a lot in kind of the last hour of the session, where we do need drivers. We do, and we're kind of missing some of the compliance type drivers or the expectations very clearly stated out. But we also need to make it such that that the companies can achieve these things, that we provide the right carrots and the right kind of the ability for small businesses to be able to meet these standards and requirements. Otherwise, they're not going to work very well. If everybody's out of compliance, then the compliance doesn't work. So they need to actually be achievable things that people can do. There's a lot of starts in this. One thing that we were particularly interested in, we talked with Alex about, was the opportunity for kind of being able to plug in early in the process for when the companies first start out and they go to their small business development center, or they talk with a small business administration. What can they do? What guidance can SBA or the Small Business Development Center provide, and what kind of support can they provide to help these small businesses to understand what they need to do for cybersecurity and actually help them make it a reality? So just one example of one of the things we were thinking about and how I kind of brainstormed was this whole idea of, in addition to providing kind of what we talked with you about, Val, the whole cyber care package, kind of also this volunteer match program where we could match up cyber practitioners who are volunteering with their time to be able to actually help these small businesses to kind of implement or provide guidance to them on how they could actually use the cyber care package or whatever tools that they had. Because there are a lot of people in the cybersecurity community, and it's one of the things I love being part of this community is that people are really willing to help and share. So if they have the opportunity to volunteer, there's definitely a lot on the table that I think we could take advantage of in helping small businesses to be able to implement security early and kind of be part of that, build it in by design early in the process, and kind of match up these, volunteers, use the cyber care package, and be able to help these small businesses.
Well, thank you, Matthew. I think those. I think both the components and in terms of the partnership that we have to build is definitely going to be essential as we put together from your work, from Kiersten's work, and then take it forward. I'd like to see, take it forward to Mike, probably in terms of the solutions. How do you see the support ecosystem, and especially I want to throw some shed some light on the fact that large organizations have managed security service providers. They have their in-house SOC and in-house support systems, but smaller businesses who, if they go out to build those services up themselves, I think it's not just economical, but it's it's not practical. And if they want to even hire a staff who would be responsible for cybersecurity, we're looking at $100,000 per person. So what does that get you, right? So when you look at the support infrastructure that needs to be there, where it's a 1-800 number, and I'll get to my cyber barista concept, but what do you think in terms of support we should look at, Mike, when you compare that to large or existing businesses and infrastructure?
Sure, I think there's a lot of resources out there. Again, just finding them, and I think there's a couple that have been mentioned here that are good repositories of reference and tools and knowledge, just from a pure information perspective. But then how do you connect with real people, real providers, and it's really based on networking. So go to an event, talk to a peer, talk to some other cyber expert. And I personally don't have any problem finding enough cyber people because I teach them and I run through about 160 a year. But at the same time, there are organizations, UT San Antonio, other universities, Collin College, University of North Texas, SMU, UT Dallas, and some others that have just a sea of very skilled, talented people that just don't have the job experience that satisfies some hiring minimum requirements. There's some pretty funny memes in cybersecurity where you've got this guy that applied for a job and their job requirement requires 5 years in some tool that guy actually wrote 2 years ago. So how he can't possibly qualify for the job requirements. So there are some hurdles, but I think a lot of those can be overcome with just being creative, being open to alternative methods, looking for hungry people that are capable, they're dedicated, and you give somebody like that a shot, and they'll be loyal to you. They'll bend over backwards. Finding the right person obviously is still a process, but there are plenty of people out there that just need an opportunity to get the experience. So for small businesses, I think the information's out there. There's resources out there, and there are people out there capable. You just gotta find them.
Yeah, and I think finders keepers for as long as the scale is not there. But I think the goal is to saturate the market with cyber talent. Hopefully, we'll get there very soon. And this is where I would put a plug for our program that we announced this morning, and that has been in the news for quite some time. Is with Suffolk Partners, we won the Department of Labor's contract to build America's cyber apprenticeship program and extend that whole registered apprenticeship program. It's just 3 weeks into it, and they love the model. We really don't have to do much than to execute right now, because last 3 years we have been building that model out. And I think that's where we started looking into this demand side. And if I can tee up the next part of this conversation about cybersecurity, supply was already in rarity, right? When there are 1.5 or 3 million, whoever, depending on who you ask, there are cybersecurity jobs that need to be filled. However, there are not too many people who are keen on that career. It's very specialized, and we have not really made a good job in communicating out the requirements so well. And the 2 years new product versus 5 years experience on that is a irony that we see all the time, especially in this field. And that is where I think I want to emphasize the fact that the supply and demand, this is a great area for economic impact. This is a great area for building a demand side that from a job and business, there is a demand that industry needs to kind of invest in and grow. What we found out is that as pandemic hit, we were getting up this cyber capacity and expanding this program, and all of a sudden the jobs just disappeared. Not that jobs didn't, the requirement didn't disappear. The number of jobs that are open disappeared because of all the reasons that we know about that is going on right now in the economy, right? So if we build this up, I think there is those apprentices that we're going to train out of that are come out of the DOL program are going to find a home. And what I had suggested, when I spoke with many of you, is that let's have this cyber barista program, which kids they go brew coffee in the morning, and then afternoon they go get trained through this program, and in the evening they can field cyber at least tier 1 level calls, that they get to know what the problem is, right? So that's the concept of cyber barista. We want to kind of explore and see how it works. But I believe that this could be the first stop for many cyber professionals before someone like you and me, we get to hire them for larger businesses and right. So that first stepping stone could be helping small businesses, because it ranges from a very different scale, from small businesses just wanting to know how to configure certain things, or if they just curious that the mail I got looks fishy. Is it so, right? I mean, very, very basic questions. And then going on to the extent of, okay, I bought this software, how do I configure this, right? So that's the support ecosystem that went to it. So Kiersten, I want to pivot to you with that. In terms of Cyber Readiness Institute, if not a question, if I think when we start pushing the people that come to this cyber care package for learning, and when we push to Cyber Readiness Institute, what would be their journey? What would their journey look like? What should we tell people that this is what you're going to expect when you go to Cyber Readiness Institute?
Well, I think, one of the things that we've tried to do is we've tried to tier the journey, because recognizing that everybody kind of comes in with a different base level and wishes, we're trying to create that foundation, but also give people opportunities. So, the very basic, we have a starter kit, which essentially is the template policies on the 4 core issues that I talked about, USBs, phishing, patching, authentication, and software updates. And so I think there is that starter kit that you can do just to kind of be the primer of, okay, here are the things I need to be thinking about, as well as an incident response plan template. The program itself, the Cyber Readiness Program, really guides the whole business through this cultural shift to get buy-in, to educate, to really start identifying what those habits need to be to create that cultural change. And that, I think, would be the destination. A lot of businesses come in and start with that. And I think it would be my recommendation just to offer both, because you never want, it's sort of like you don't want to create such strong and secure policies that you create all the workarounds. And similarly, you don't want to provide so much as far as a tool that people are like, you know what, I don't have the time. And we've even tried to estimate the time on each stage to say, this is how long this is going to take you, so that it's very much of eyes wide open as you go into it. But the other piece, which I think is becoming even more relevant right now, are the guides that we developed this year on the Securing a Remote Workforce and the Hybrid series. There are a series of 2 to 3 page guides that are just very digestible and accessible. And so I could also see a business coming in and just saying, I'm going to sort of a la carte cherry pick these things that I need to know more about, whether it's ransomware, phishing. What we're trying to do is make all of it complementary, but at the same time, ensure that you can just dive into one or two of these issues and still get enough information about them. While we want everyone to go through the program because that creates a better foundation of small business security, we understand that at this time, every business is going to have different issues and challenges. So I would say, you know, between the starter kit, the program, and the guides, those are the resources from which they can choose. And some entity may go all the way through all of them, but they're all focused on the same issue. So you're still going to get that messaging around human behavior, around helping your employees become educated and informed.
Right. So I think it's a level of reinforcement grows as we grow from one level to the other, and they learn more and they practice more and they come back probably for more information. So I think that I love it. I think, you know, right now, as I said, you know, the small businesses, when you talk to them, they're typically overwhelmed about the cyber issues, and even though they think that they are not target, I think that awareness itself is growing as they probably see, unfortunately, many of their peers getting hit, and they will learn from that. Hope that it's before that they learn and start executing, but definitely go to cyber readiness for their initial journey. Matthew, I'll pivot from Kiersten's point to you in terms of getting ready to actually do something, right? You know, small businesses are not one type. There's stereotyped very quickly and clearly with mom and pop shop, but that's not the case, right? They really may already have some tech stack that they need to work with. What are your thoughts on, and this is where I would probably ask your cyber professional opinion about actually doing it, you know, making it happen from a big business and not a miniaturized small business version, but things that they need to think about technology-wise.
I think in terms of technology-wise, I think it goes, I mean, so it really depends on the type of business that they have, so what kind of risk they have. And this is kind of knowing your business. So whether they're, you know, they're selling something online, whether they're mostly a brick and mortar, whether they do some other thing, you know, that's going to allow them some sort of level of inherent risk. And that's going to guide what they really need and what they don't need specifically. Once kind of they understand that, then that kind of goes to, you know, do we have people on staff that can really help us out, or do we not really have that? And so we're going to need to outsource. A lot of cases, and this is actually partially what we did in our research, we created what we call this lightweight risk assessment. It's called LASER, lightweight assessment of security risk. But it's just a 15-question survey that would take less than 15 minutes to do, very quick. Basically evaluate the inherent risk that a business has. So, you know, are they storing PII, the PHI? Are they storing just basic information, simple information? You know, do they have other risks inherent to them? And then what kind of support do they have? Do they have someone, you know, do they have an IT person that knows a little security? Do they not really have any IT people as well? And then it provides kind of a, you know, take action score, which will basically say, you know, like, for example, if they have a high inherent risk and they don't really have any support whatsoever, they should take action immediately to get that support, and they may need to consider outsourcing support specifically, versus one that maybe has, they're doing pretty low risk things. They actually happen to have someone who's pretty savvy in IT security. Maybe, you know, they can rely on using, you know, outsourcing to well-known, mature, you know, software cloud services and using that IT person to help to secure them and kind of monitor them. So once again, kind of looping back to your overall question, I think it really depends on the type of business, the type of support they have. But the overall challenges, I think, with small businesses is if they actually do need that outsourcing support, it's kind of how to find that, how to find the right one that's the right fit for them specifically. That's where we came across a lot of people really seeming confused and kind of having trouble figuring out what's the next step, who do I reach out to?
Definitely makes sense. I think contextualization to their, you know, making it contextual to their business is definitely essential. It cannot have the same model everywhere, but make it real for their own businesses. So I'll pivot to Mike, you for a quick take on, you know, we talked about that the staircase of journey or learning curve that they're to go for, and then Matthew talked about their requirement for them to know themselves, like, you know, what's the starting point for them. A lot of this is self-assessment, and then something that we are also putting on our site. There is Kiersten's site has that. Even GCA site has a self-assessment toolkit. I think what we are urging all together is for them to take a look at themselves as to what is contextual for them. But when it comes to doing it for the first time, Mike, what do you think we should suggest businesses to consider?
Asking for help.
Asking for help, yes.
So one of the big pitfalls, especially for small businesses, with regard to compliance, whether that's PCI or some other typically questionnaire-driven alignment with requirements, is thinking, I can do this, I can fill this out, and whether they fill it out right or not, oftentimes it lends itself to more questions from those that they're submitting it to than comfort. And so just reach out, find a good advisor, a consultant, a professional services firm, a peer, and ask for help. And whether that's a questionnaire or the implementation of something more structured, like an entire framework, whether that's in NIST and CMMC or ISO or GDPR or something along those lines. Because I think that's another misconception is, you're telling me I have to be compliant, or I need these controls, and wow, there's 300 of them or 500 of them, and there's just no way I can possibly manage that. There was a comment about taking this enterprise control structure and sizing it down to a small business. Well, the frameworks are designed for that. So understanding that it is a framework, not a cookie cutter approach. And asking for assistance. How does this apply to me? So once someone has an understanding of how your business works and the scope that we're focusing on, they can take this seemingly massive, complicated, unmanageable thing and filter it down. They can customize it. What is applicable? What's not? What's required and essential? What's optional? And what are the different ways of implementing that thing? Security is not always just black and white. It's got to be applicable, usable, maintainable. And so ask for help. Find someone that's had to go through this. Find someone that does this for a living. And obviously trying to do it on your own is common. But I give open book tests all the time, and people still fail them. So ask for help. Find a good advisor.
Well, that's great. I think that tees us off for the partnership part with the cyber industry and the experts with the end users who are really going to need help. I think the tee of this discussion to Alex for that. I think Alex mentioned about the fact that that we need people who can go and spend time with the smaller businesses, maybe in the forums and all, get them a little bit more comfortable with the area of cyber, and also make them comfortable for to go where to ask for help, right? I mean that's another area, like where do they go ask for help? So Alex, your thoughts on how can we reach the end user, in this case the small business?
Yeah, I'm really interested in service learning models. This might be something that they can speak to with Cyber Patriots. I'm not too familiar with that program, but it might have that type of component. But basically, where you're training up, it could be youth or job seekers on cybersecurity skills for careers, and then as part of their training, they get hands-on experience providing these services, right, to small businesses, particularly those in their own communities. I've seen that as a really effective model in other technology support areas. So, with basic digital literacy assistance for our low-income residents, we've had a program called Community Technology Associates, where a nonprofit is training up transitional age youth on IT and coding skills, and then as part of their service learning, they either refurbish computers and they can distribute those out to community, or they provide one-on-one tech assistance. So that has worked pretty well. There's an organization in the Bay Area called Hack the Hood, and they're training youth on building websites, and then their final project is they have to work with a small business in their community to build a website for them. And I've also seen it. I've heard something from Philadelphia as a program from Temple University that popped up during COVID, where they're helping small businesses, digitize and develop an online presence in response to the pandemic. And they're partnering with the various ethnic chambers of commerce, in the city. So the African American Chamber of Commerce and Asian American Chamber of Commerce. So really tapping into those networks. So I'm interested in this. We're pretty early in our kind of cybersecurity journey here when it comes to digital equity, but these are some programs that I think could work, or at least are worth a shot. And I also think that having those types of models can address some of the language gaps and the digital literacy gaps that some small business owners are facing, right? So we know that there are a lot of great resources out there, but for monolingual, Chinese or Spanish speaking, business owner, how accessible are these guides? Just a lot of the stuff that I've seen are only available in English, and they're written at a pretty higher, it's a certain technical level as far as like the amount of jargon that they're putting in there. So if you have someone who's kind of from the community, from your own community, providing this hands-on, walkthrough of these materials, I think it could be a lot more effective.
Oh, absolutely. I think the last mile engagement is definitely where we want to make the final impact, right? I mean, Kiersten has earlier talked about the goal of 1 million small businesses, making them secure. I mean, that seems to be a lofty goal, but when you compare the big problem that we have, it's actually a drop, and those drops need to assimilate quickly into a bucket, right? That we can provide. So with that, I think move to Vic for your thoughts on especially knowing that you have been very close, active participant of the cybersecurity ecosystem in San Antonio, with the Cyber Patriot program and UT San Antonio's program and all. What are your suggestions on top of Alex's in terms of the engagement of the small businesses in this journey?
Yeah, definitely it takes the community, and we've been very fortunate here in San Antonio. We saw the need to promote cybersecurity in education, and that's why there was a small group effort to say, let's make San Antonio a center of academic excellence. And so we purposefully went about, doing cluster hires to bring all of the great minds that could help us, build information security as a program. So that was the genesis of the Center for Infrastructure Assurance and Security, CIAS, who has now even built even more gamification. So they've got this new program called the Culture Security, to where they've created a family of Cybears. So they've Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and the younger kids. So we're starting with the Uno game kind of how do you play matching colors and matching shapes and numbers, and then incorporate cybersecurity in that kind of gamification, which then progresses all the way through the elementary K through 6, and saying, okay, here is a platform to where you can look at packet tracing and understand the inner workings of how information goes from a client to a server and then out to the internet. And then, once again, talking about the Cyber Patriot program, and where we go into middle schools and high schools and give them that foundation of operating systems and what makes them work, and looking at, pursuing certifications. We just had several students graduate with their CCNA, their Network Plus and Security Plus, and they are using that expertise in technology. Texas A&M University has created a regional security operations center that started with the city of Bryan, Texas, to where the students that were pursuing cybersecurity created this managed service to where they were supporting the university system. Then that got expanded to the local community, to where the students who are in the cybersecurity program have the wherewithal with certifications and the systems to provide that managed service to the community, to businesses that want to buy in at the appropriate price point, to where they get the experience and then they get the service. So it's really about just, it can't be a cookie cutter approach. It's got to be something that, you gradually build out and grow so that it, serves your community. And same thing in Houston. Umesh Verma has the Cyber Houston. We call it the ISAO, which is the Information Sharing and Analysis Organization, which brings together those common communities to say, okay, how can we look at best practices and share that and then tell you about the analysis of what worked well for us in this business case or in this practical application. So Cyber Houston is an ISAO. Cyber Texas is an ISAO. We should have more ISAOs in the regional perspective, and more ISAOs that are even focused on the service industry, and just like there are ISACs for financial services, multi-state ISACs. How do we increase that connectivity tissue and sharing information and being more open as to what works to make your community more safe and secure?
I just want to add on to something that Vic mentioned, the cyber and this whole idea of just making cybersecurity a little more fun, or not so much about risk assessment and all the crazy things that could go wrong. We started off doing cybersecurity workshops in a very vanilla, here are all the things that you should be doing, and here are all the risks out there. But then I've noticed some of the other tech programming that we do, for youth or job seekers is very fun, right? We put on community tech days, and people can come experiment with making a beat on a laptop, or programming a robot, or taking apart a computer. So it's cybersecurity is just really serious, kind of boring stuff, and then other parts of tech are just so much more exciting. So one organization that I found in San Francisco, it's very similar to a lot of what you guys are doing with volunteers, just trying to get involved in the community. They're called Cyber Defenders, and last year they organized a cybersecurity escape room, at the library and with youth, right? So kids are learning, cybersecurity practices in a very interactive, fun way. And I went to a workshop last week, and they did a live capture the flag exercise, cybersecurity capture the flag exercise. So I just, I'm just really excited and interested in kind of seeing more of these activities and events pop up where we're making cybersecurity more engaging and just more fun and accessible to folks, rather than just constantly talking about risk and viruses and malware and ransomware and all that stuff.
Val, if I can just add in on that, because I think it's an important point, which is that we tend to think cybersecurity is about science and tech. And I'm a big believer that it's a multidisciplinary field, and that the only way we're going to develop real solutions that are sustainable and that are innovative is by pulling in the expertise across many disciplines: psychology, sociology, history, politics, all of these areas. And I think when we're talking to youth about what it means to be in the field of cybersecurity, it's so important that we highlight that point, because that interdisciplinary approach, when people say, what is it about, what is cybersecurity? To me, it's about solving problems and building solutions. And when we think about how to do that most effectively, it absolutely has to pull from various expertise. And it's so important when we're trying to build this workforce in this field that it's obviously science, technology, math are critical to all of this, but we can't lose sight of these other capabilities. And it really goes to the importance of diversity in thinking, diversity in experience, in background, that all play into the true successes in cybersecurity. And I think that's where we can find success. That's where we can be more innovative, and also really recruit a diverse workforce that's so needed for the future of this field.
Absolutely, I'm into that. I think that's that kind of sums up that how this ties so closely to the cyber capacity work, that it cannot be one cannot survive without the other, right? This is a place where there is demand, and those demand is fulfilled by a diverse workforce that applies itself in all contexts. So thank you, Kiersten. Extremely important point. Well, all right. I know, we've crossed the 90-minute mark very quickly, and this has been a fascinating conversation already. I would love to go on, but I think I would do justice to all of you. Been talking for almost an hour and more. So maybe do a quick lightning round about go around this table and close it out in the next 5 to 7 minutes with some time to spare back into your calendar. So Satish, I'll start with you. The last mile, grassroots, how do we reach them? And your quick thoughts on that.
Yeah, certainly. And then if I can take 1 minute on the fun part of it, I just want to add
Part,
that,
absolutely.
taking cybersecurity is not a serious thing. How do we engage them, enable them? What we did in experiment is we have tried gamification, we tried educating an hour or other things. It's a spray and pray approach. The awareness is high and then it goes back to the original thing. How do we making a long-lasting cultural change? Then we started introducing comedy. So we collaborated with a stand-up comedian from New York and then said, let's put killer clips, which is 2 minutes. It's all about comedy and cyber awareness together. And we started introducing those clips to our audience. So it just took off, and then we are starting hearing some good engagement as well. So again, taking it as a fun part and making it as a good experience is what I wanted to add. And coming back to your question on how do we take it to the grassroots levels, I think it all comes to the simplification of our package, particularly to the small businesses. It's all about, it should be an attainable goal, and breaking big abstract cybersecurity into smaller pieces, like Kiersten brought up, the starter kit. I think that's a great first step for them to understand it is not an overwhelming experience. I can take it step by step with a cost effectiveness, and I can understand this. Because the channel we are talking, when we talk to the small businesses or somebody who's in who doesn't have any clue about cybersecurity, or somebody who has very, very, very little knowledge. So if we can break down our package into a very simplified, small components, and they can understand that, I think that's a great first step. And Kiersten fantastically put it, that starter kit is a great thing. That's all they need to start with. And they also need to understand it's not a one-time, it's a phased approach, and they can go step by step. If we give that assurance to them, they will start consuming it right off the bat. So I think that's what I want to emphasize. It's a journey, and they can attain it step by step is a key thing. And again, the other component or characteristic of small businesses is that they don't have all the in-house competence. Even if you give a 15 questionnaire to ask and answer, the people who are answering doesn't have any knowledge about what it is being answered as well. So they turn around back to us and say, we don't know about our risk posture. Why can't you also help us to fix it? So they're also looking for remediation. So I think that's where they want to spend more money on not identifying the posture, but they want to put more money in fixing it. So they would always ask us, let's reduce the risk assessment part, but can we put more on the remediation part? Again, that's where we got to really come up with a creative approach in the packaging, such that we don't go like in a kind of a long-lasting, kind of a long-winded approach for them, break it into smaller components, make it attainable. That's what I want to emphasize.
Great, thank you. All right, great points. So Vic, let me turn to you for your quick thoughts, conclusion.
Yeah, it just like has been said before, baby steps, and don't assume it away. Leverage National Cybersecurity Awareness Month to the maximum extent possible, and promote what's being done by the National Security Alliance with Kelvin Coleman and Daniel Elliott, and what they're doing, what we're doing here. Make it fun, and I like the comedy aspect. I think that's another tool that can be used. I heard about another program too, and I'll be quiet. There is a coach on the East Coast that's taking his basketball team, that after they play basketball and they practice, they do an hour of code. I'm going like, wow. Now that's just it's asymmetric, and you just don't think that a coach would take an hour of practice time just to sort of hey, look, so let me show you how you can code this using Python. I'm going like, whoa. I mean, just things like that, just make it fun. Another activity that I'm involved with is the Coder Dojo phenomenon. We have the Coder Dojo Collaborative here in San Antonio. We had at one point 141 students that come together on 2-hour segments on 8-week segments, and we're teaching them programming on the Raspberry Pi, software security for cybersecurity, taking Minecraft and programming in JavaScript. They actually built an application for the city of San Antonio that mapped the city park. So they built an app, and just making it fun and just just finding where the students are at and engaging them at their level. And then those who are transitioning, who are digital immigrants like myself, be that bridge to help them make that transition as they're looking to get certifications or transitioning to become program managers in the cybersecurity space. Because to what Kiersten said earlier, it is about that influential aspect of the human psychology, because to the degree that we can harden the human OS, that makes what we do from a technical side even more effective. So when they understand that there's people, processes, and technology and information, and we all have a role to play in that, make it bite-sized, micro bite-sized, and incentivize them to be a part of the community. Thanks.
Great. I think code to code. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. How can we switch from get the warm up and then get the work and then do a mental jogging to get coding done. So thank you for that, Vic. Great insight. Matthew, your final thoughts in conclusion.
Got it. All right. I come back to kind of the carrot and the stick approach. And I think the humor and kind of making things fun is a great example of how we can kind of provide that carrot. But within that, making things just really clear and achievable, clear what's expected now versus what's expected continuously in an ongoing manner to the small businesses. So it makes it something that, is tangible, that they can put in their hands and say, I can do this. And also clear where they can get resources and support, because I think it's been said in this panel, there's a lot out there that can be done. I think it's just that portion of being able to make sure that these small businesses know where they can go. And maybe part of that is starting early in the process, or having the Small Business Development Center send annual reminders, like here, you can reach out to these groups for support. But kind of being able to close that gap, I think, is a big part of trying to be successful.
Mike, your thoughts in closing?
It's similar to the coach and the coding. We do something somewhat asymmetric as well. I mentioned that, it'd be great if we could add cyber curriculum to a business degree. We've done pretty well in our intern and some of our education programs that we support in building leadership into the cyber programs. So if we can't put cyber in business, we're putting business in cyber, but really just focusing on that leadership. So as a resource, whether it's cyber or IT in an organization, bringing that leadership value and that leadership quality to whatever it is you do, taking the initiative, taking responsibility and ownership, but at the same time making it applicable. So humor is a way to, as mentioned before, is a way to make a topic applicable. How does that apply to me? And that's what makes it funny. And so finding a way to make cyber apply to you or your organization is also important. Much like when Sarbanes-Oxley came out years ago, and this is this financial regulation, and then you've got these IT people going, why do I have to do something? I'm in IT. I don't have anything to do with the financials and how we report that stuff. So I think a similar exercise is valuable in showing that to business why cyber is applicable. What are the risks? What are the benefits? Why invest in it now instead of pay for it later? And it does come down to risk in the business decision, unless you're a cybersecurity company. But so make it applicable and cross that business IT line bidirectionally, ideally, but at a minimum. You've got to teach IT people too about a little bit more about how business works and leadership works and accountability and the risks, just as much, if not more so, than teaching the business side more about cyber.
Great point. I think that accountability factor needs to be with all of us, and the cybersecurity is not a spectator sport, especially less so for the technology people who are actually putting it together. So thank you for the perspective, Mike. Well, Alex, your closing thoughts, please.
I mean, let's just make it happen. I mean, there are so many great ideas on here. This panel, I learned a lot from what you all are doing. Yeah, let's continue to work on implementing these ideas, and let's continue to share share lessons learned and share stories like this. I don't know if there is a community of practice that's already formed where folks like us can get together on a regular basis to share some of this stuff. Whether it's a Slack channel or a forum, I think that would be great. But yeah, I really appreciate all of the things that you all shared today. A lot of resources already out there, so let's make it happen, and let's continue to share.
Thank you, Alex. And I think I'll just suggest that we scale up our society of mentors, and San Francisco has a great great venue for us in terms of our friends in tech, and those are very close to cyber security space in the industry. So CFF, Society of Mentors, it is. We're going to unleash those mentors to go take care of their community. Well, finally, closing with Kiersten, you get the last word, and probably the takeaway that you and I and Mike and all here have to go make it happen, right?
Yeah, I think those were really the last words. It's been great to learn from everybody. And I think just the takeaway from all of this is all that's out there to really integrate cybersecurity into everything that we do, to make it easy, to make it accessible, and to really help communicate the message that everybody has a role in this, whether it is a leader, whether it is an employee, but that we've got to create this culture of security that comes from the current environment. We are benefactors of all of the joy of technology, and with that comes a responsibility. And we've all heard the analogies, I think, in this space probably ad nauseum, but the car one to me is a really important one. We don't have to be mechanics to drive a car, but we do need to know the basics. We do need to know what it means to change your oil, what it means to know when your tire pressure is down, and all of the things that come with it. And that really is the responsibility of technology. And it has nothing to do with aptitudes or expertise or concentrations, but there is this fundamental baseline level of security that we all need to take responsibility for. And if we do that, then we can create the cultures of security, we can innovate more effectively, and we can truly create an environment that benefits from both innovation as well as security.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was heartwarming. And I think this whole conversation we did take it to the finish line, I think, but this is where the rest begins, right? Unfortunately, it goes around. Thank you for sticking with us for these 2 hours. Thank you for joining us, Kiersten, and sharing all the great work that you're doing. And we'll be just going to take this forward. I think this is the commitment, that similar commitment we made with the Global Commission for Cybersecurity Education back in 2018 for cybersecurity education and capacity building. And the CFF global community and our industry leaders and the executives are going to go right behind what Kiersten and Matthew and Phil and all have done in this space, and take it to the next level with all your support and input. So thank you very much. We'll look forward to working with you. This has been a pleasure, and all the best. Take care and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.